Well, thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you, ODI, for organizing this important conference. We are really delighted to being here, and our General Director couldn't make it, but I am here to try to share with you some of the Colombian perspective. And I'm very happy that Jonathan did the presentation. I didn't know what he was going to say. I was very nervous also, but I think it's the perfect complement and introduction for what I'm going to say. So I think we are doing a good team, Jonathan, and more than you are now in Colombia, based in Colombia. So it's very good for us and for the future of development cooperation. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the country perspective on different contexts and different approaches. So I'm going to begin with how and why should donors give aid to middle-income countries such as Colombia. And my first slide was, and I think I'm not going to go too deep on it because it's what Jonathan just mentioned, is how you have two different approaches to measure development, and how you can have a linear approach, which is in the left, and how you can have a multidimensional approach. So I think the development and the world looks more like the right side than the left side, and in Colombia this is what is happening. So we are very much looking forward towards a multidimensional approach rather than a linear approach that takes into account only the income per capita of the countries, and rather going to multidimensional approach where poverty, environment, climate change, all the issues we already heard yesterday are in the arena and are the reality of our countries, especially in middle-income countries such as Colombia. So taking into account this, I think we need to recognize the diversity of the developing world. We have more than 100 middle-income countries in the world, and we cannot only categorize through the income per capita, and I think that has been said yesterday also. Marianne mentioned it. You are also from a middle-income country, and we already saw how different your reality and your context is from, for example, our context in Colombia and in many Latin American countries. So this diversity also brings a diversity of challenges, diversity of needs, diversity of gaps, structural gaps, which are part of the multidimensional approach. And this could bring two different classifications, not only one proxies, one primary proxy of development, which is income per capita, but could also bring group of countries. For example, I know many organizations and actors are working and trying to think about it, and I think we are in the right way, and we should keep moving in this way in order to see how relevant could be poverty, or to eradicate poverty in one country, and how important is to focus on environment or infrastructure, education, taxes, savings, well, those different gaps we have. So I think it is important also because this linear approach has been made by the World Bank, and also the OECD, and especially the DAC committee, take into account that approach in order to guide and orientate their aid to different countries. And as soon, just as Jonathan said, as soon as you become a middle-income country and upper middle-income country, I'm sorry, and I need to focus on low-income countries without a sustainable strategy, without nothing, and only you take out the money or the aid or the flows you have in our country, and you bring it and you orient it to the other ones. And this has very negative impacts in our countries. So I think this has to be reviewed. So I have been asked also to talk about the different and distinctive demands of middle-income countries and what should donors do to address them. So my first conclusion here is that it's very difficult to have distinctive demands of middle-income countries, just of what I just said. We have context and is a category of middle-income countries growing in size and in ambiguity. So the heterogeneous character of middle income or the developing world cannot be, for the middle-income countries, you should focus on economic growth only, or on mine, or I don't know, so many things. It depends on the context and different kind of context. But I try to do, and I try to analyze how we can make a group of demands, or how can we be supported as a middle-income country. And I think there are 4 areas. The first one is economic growth. The second one is economic and financial stability. The third one is environment preservation. And the fourth one is the increasing of the social welfare or social promotion. So that's what I try to do, at least in Latin America. That could be the context for our countries. Just an example, in Colombia, this is how development cooperation, including private sector, philanthropy, and ODA, is aligned to our national and local priorities. And you can see, just as what our Chinese colleague mentioned yesterday, we have the main percentage of aid going to good governance. I'm sorry, it's in Spanish, which is the blue one. The 40% goes to good governance. Then you have, especially from ODA, you have aid coming to victims, DDR, and human rights. Then the 14%, the green one, is about social welfare. Then you have two slides of the cake. The purple one, which is economic growth, that has been increasing almost before 1 year ago. It was almost like 3%. Now in 1 year we're 13%, and this is because of the information we're getting from the private sector and the philanthropy also. And the 10%, the blue, light blue, is environment and sustainable development. And now Colombia is focusing on that sustainable development, especially local sustainable development. So it's like a whole picture about how development cooperation is arriving to our country. Here I'm not going to be, I'm going to be very brief. So only I want to mention that poverty and inequality is not only about also a linear approach. It's different kind and it's multidimensional. Poverty and inequality, for example, you can have the difference, and I have here some numbers to see how you can compare if you see the poverty per income and what are the results and the numbers if you see poverty in a multidimensional way, and how you can see, for example, the blue in both graphics are the national level, the red are the main cities, and the green are the rest of our country. So you can see how the green, there are inequalities also between the national level, the main cities, and the territories. And this is also something we have to take into account when thinking about the future of development and, of course, the future of development cooperation. Here, I'm going to focus on 2 things only, and it's some conclusions that the International Cooperation Agency in Colombia has right now, after many years of being coordinating aid in Colombia. And for us, for example, and I know we're going to talk about this later today, about the use of country systems as a middle-income country, we have problems in Colombia. Even if in Colombia is 0.4% of our GDP is the percentage of of aid, so we are non-dependent on aid. But and that brings that our national systems are not prepared to receive the flows into our budgets, and we have been having a lot of problems. So we think it's better in a country like Colombia to focus more on capacity development, capacity strengthen, and how you strengthen institutions in a sustainable way, not only bringing experts from the north to the south and then the experts go away, but how you can develop capacities in a country such as Colombia. And we have been also working since like 2 years ago to try to bring the private sector and all the foundations, NGOs and church and many of the actors we have right now in Colombia to bring them on board. And it's a big challenge also in Colombia, just as many of you mentioned yesterday. For us it's a challenge, and even if we have so many actors due to our internal situation in Colombia. So this is very focused on how do Colombia feel being a supplier and country that demands development cooperation, and this can respond to our national politics, because for us international cooperation is both, is an instrument of foreign policy, but it's also an instrument for development. We don't see Colombia as a supplier, only a supplier, because we are very conscious that we still have huge needs in our countries, and those needs are also with an internal situation in Colombia, even if we are the second economy in Latin America and the Caribbean. So that is the dichotomy of the development cooperation context in Colombia. For us, South-South cooperation is very important. The President Santos has been asking us to scale up South-South and triangular cooperation, and our budget for South-South and triangular cooperation has increased 8 times in 1 year. So before we had only $1 million for doing South-South and triangular cooperation. Now, in 2012, we have $8 million to have to do South-South and triangular cooperation. For us, it's not about amounts. It's not about the quantity of flows, and it's just about the quality of what we are doing, and in a demand side and the supply side. And we try to apply all the lessons learned as the biggest recipient country in Latin America, because we are the biggest before Haiti and before the earthquake in Haiti. Now we are the second in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we are facing that problem even if the percentage of aid is very low. So just to close, I would like to mention and to stress the fact that in Colombia, for example, we're not having the resources and it are not dropping. We have been feeling a transformation of what development cooperation is, and this especially with the new actors or the other actors such as the private sector and all NGOs and those actors that are very, very, very important for us right now. Also, the importance of recognizing the heterogeneity of the so-called middle-income countries, that we don't have to think in only one category or only a uniform and homogeneous category to classify countries. This is the biggest invitation, and that was the main thing I wanted to mention, because you have to take into account the particular context, particular needs and particular capacities, and there are the countries that needs to say what we need. It's not about if you are a middle-income country, so you go to these distinctive demands. So each country has its own context, and is not about only effectiveness at the very international level, but how in the national and local level you have to have a horizontal dialogue with your partners at the country level in order to prioritize what you need. So for us, it's important to review the development concept, to reevaluate the classification that has been used for orient the ODI, and to bring an integral answer to development, to the development problem. So, yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.